In 2009, RuPaul launched a groundbreaking reality TV show. Almost 15 years later, Drag Race is one of the biggest franchises in the world, with 15 regular seasons, 8 all-star seasons, numerous spin-offs like RuPaul's Secret Celebrity Drag Race, online content like The Pit Stop and Fashion Photo Review, as well as a growing number of international franchises like Canada's Drag Race France, Mexico, and most recently, Brazil and Germany. RuPaul's Drag Race contributed in bringing the art of drag to the mainstream that is undeniable. The show also contributed to propelling the careers of talented performers into the mainstream. Jinkx Monsoon, Trixie Mattel, Alaska, Bob the Drag Queen, and Monét Exchange are all examples of performers who benefited from their appearance on the show. But what goes up must come down, and Drag Race might have reached the point of saturation.
I'm hitting a wall with Drag Race.
Yeah, we've reached saturation point.
I just can't keep up with it all.
Make sure to hit that subscribe button for more content like this, and hit that like button to help other people like you and me join this conversation. It has become virtually impossible to consume every RuPaul's Drag Race content. There is simply too much going on all at once. Now let me put my marketing strategist hat on, just like RuPaul likes to put her producer hat on. This abundance of Drag Race content reminds me of a marketing concept called market cannibalization. This phenomena occurs when a company introduces a new product that displaces one of its own older products. Sometimes market cannibalization might be planned. For example, when Apple releases a new iPhone model, the sales of the old one drop. That's fine. After all, the old and the new model don't compete for a long time on the market. But market cannibalization can become dangerous when multiple products of the same brand compete for the same customers. Take Coca-Cola for example. Their products range from Cherry Coke, Vanilla Coke, Coke Zero, and so much more. They're all competing for the same customers and therefore take sales from each other. The Drag Race multiverse faces both forms of cannibalization at once. Just like Apple, when RuPaul's Drag Race releases a new season, the viewers who watched previous seasons might be interested in watching the next one. But just like Coca-Cola, the RuPaul's Drag Race multiverse is expanding its franchises too, with multiple versions of the franchise airing at the same time or close to each other, meaning that some of these franchises compete for the same pool of viewers, sometimes airing on the same platform. I'll give you a tangible example with Canada, where I'm from. My friends and I often organize Drag Race viewing parties on Fridays. We gather at someone's home and watch the show together. It's a fun time. In September 2021, we started watching Drag Race UK Season 3. It aired from September to November. But it did not take long for the UK franchise to overlap with our local franchise. Canada's Drag Race Season 2 aired from October to December. Both seasons were available on Crave, a streaming service here in Canada. So for a while, we were watching both seasons at the same time, meaning that we would start the evening watching UK Season 3 and then finish the evening watching an episode of Canada's Drag Race Season 2. By the time Drag Race US Season 14 premiered in January of 2022, we were drained. And when UK vs. the World started to overlap with the US season in February 2022, we could not keep up anymore. Just to highlight the madness of the RuPaul multiverse, here are all the franchises I would be interested in watching and why. Obviously, the regular US and All-Star seasons are a must. As a Canadian, I want to watch Canada's Drag Race to support the Quebec Queens and see Mitsu on the judging panel, so iconic. Similarly, I want to watch Versus the World to support our Canadian queens on the world stage. I lived in the UK in my early 20s, so I love Drag Race UK. I can't control my excitement when I see Nadine Coyle in the Snatch Game or Cheryl on the judging panel. As a French speaker, I'm interested in Drag Race France as well as Drag Race Belgique, especially since Rita Baga, a Quebecer, is hosting. And as a Spanish speaker, I'm interested in Drag Race España and Drag Race Mexico. But obviously, I cannot consume it all. On top of all that official Drag Race content, there is a bunch of related content available on the internet. There are entire YouTube channels devoted to analyzing the show. The Drag Detective and Jack Fed are the first creators that come to mind. There are also podcasts from past contestants like The Bald and the Beautiful, Sibling Rivalry, Race Chaser, and Hi Jinkx. It's a lot of Drag Race related content and we cannot consume it all. Drag Race as a franchise is very well established with its target audience, but Ru also faces growing competition on television. LGBTQ+ audiences have more options than ever before. They might choose to watch Dragula, Legendary, or We're Here. Most of these shows are distributed in the US and internationally. Local markets also produce their own television shows, some of which may compete for LGBTQ+ viewership. Drag Den in the Philippines is one example, not to mention that LGBTQ+ audience don't exclusively consume queer content. The mainstreaming of drag artists also mean that they are more prominently featured in non-queer media. For instance, Rita Baga is often invited as a guest on Quebec talk shows. She was also on Celebrity Big Brother Quebec. The most recent season featured Mona de Grenoble, who is also a recurring guest on Véronique et les Fantastiques, the most popular radio show in Canada. Priyanka is a correspondent on eTalk. In other words, I no longer need to watch RuPaul's Drag Race to see drag queens or drag race contestants on television. These are just some examples from the local media I consume, but I'm sure this trend exists elsewhere. For instance, I know that Courtney Act has been a staple on Australian television for years. You get the point. It's difficult to see how RuPaul's Drag Race can maintain the success of its main and international franchises in the ever-evolving media landscape of today. With that being said, it does not mean that the Drag Race empire is about to collapse anytime soon. Part of the success of the show can be attributed to the talent casted on each season, some of which appeal to a younger crowd who may be watching Drag Race for the first time. I'm sure the appearance of TikTok stars Sugar and Spice benefited their careers as much as it benefited the franchise, opening it to a new and younger audience. Drag Race's ability to add younger viewers to its existing viewership will help the show stay relevant. Localized franchises may also contribute to extending the relevancy of the show, especially as calls to support local drag grow. Seeing your local drag queens featured on your local franchise is fantastic. I love it. Drag Race also benefits from an impressive infrastructure, official and otherwise, to support the show, something that most of Ru's competitors on TV simply cannot build overnight. For example, their YouTube strategy is on point. I also want to point out how WoW uses the success of Drag Race to increase its influence within the LGBTQ+ media sphere, which may contribute to keeping the show relevant and profitable for years. For instance, immediately after All Stars 8, WoW announced the premiere of 2 new shows on their subscription service called WoW Presents Plus, each featuring the top 2 queens of All Stars, Jimbo and Candy Muse. WoW Presents Plus attracts paying subscribers with Drag Race content and hope they'll stick around for exclusive TV shows and podcasts that are less expensive to produce. Drag Race also extends its influence in the real world with drag conventions in the US and the UK, as well as live shows, thus using the popularity of the TV show to diversify the revenue streams of WoW. Drag Race has a Las Vegas residency at the Flamingo, featuring performers from the show. There is also a touring show called Work the World Tour. They played at the Toronto Scotiabank Centre here, which is huge. That's where the Leafs play. In addition, this connection with the real world likely contributes to maintaining the die-hard fans engaged. So yes, on the one hand, it is true that we have reached the point of saturation. There is too much content to consume, but at the same time, we're unlikely to witness the death of the franchise and all its connected projects anytime soon. With that being said, the sheer size of the Drag Race empire is almost certainly unsustainable as local and international media continue to compete with Ru for market shares. Add to that the fatigue that returning viewers may feel with the almost unchanged format of the show. Despite that, Drag Race has an incredibly loyal fan base and a strong infrastructure to support the show. But ultimately, to survive, Drag Race must continue to renew its viewership, casting great talent, and avoid cannibalizing its own franchises any further. And finally, I think it's worth addressing the toll that the show takes on the participants, because that too may put in jeopardy the longevity of the show, especially All-Stars seasons. Without drag queens, the show simply would not exist. And many queens who were on the show say how grateful they were for the opportunity, but also publicly discussed how difficult it is to compete on RuPaul's Drag Race. First of all, you need financial means to compete on RuPaul's Drag Race, at least the newer seasons, despite whatever Michelle likes to say. The number of looks required to compete on the show increases with every season. Some queens reportedly spent outrageous amounts of money to make it to the end. The queens also mentioned the physical and mental impact that the show has on their health. They are overworked, tired, and constantly stressed. Some even decide to leave mid-season. Add to that the pressure of the fandom when the episodes finally air. Many queens mention how toxic the fandom of Drag Race is. Others said they would never return to the show. So as the competition gets more difficult for contestants, Drag Race will have to prove that it is still worth competing and returning for All Stars. This can mean a minimum screen time guaranteed, like in the latest season of All Stars, or financial support for looks. Drag Race may have to do whatever it takes to keep new talent coming and established talent returning for All Stars. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm really curious to read your opinions. Click the top link to watch my video about the rise of anti-LGBTQ+ rights, and click the bottom link to watch my latest video. Thanks for watching.